Village Board, we are live.
Morning, everyone. Today is May 19th, 2023, and welcome to today's Village Board meeting. If we could stand for a pledge. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I could ask everyone to stay standing just for a moment of silence for Father Days. He was a longtime village resident, passed away recently at 97. So just take a moment to wish him and his family the best. Thank you. All right. Here we go. So I'd like to just make a couple of announcements. We had our 5K run. We had over 1,100 people attend and raised $35,000 for mental health awareness, and it went to Tyler Valsich Project in Montauk. If anybody doesn't know that, they can look that up, but it's just such a local organization that we support 100%, and Mickey and Valinda are very good people who've been in this community forever. I went to high school with them, so we're really happy to do this for them in memory of her son, so their son. My next announcement is just to address an editorial that was in today's Star, or yesterday's Star. I'm sorry, I have to do this almost at every meeting, but the editorial was about Herrick Park and Roy Maybury basketball courts that we removed. And if the editor of the Star really cared about writing the correct articles, he would have just picked up the phone and called us. The police chief reached out a year ago to the family and let them know we were removing those courts to make sure they didn't have any problem with it. And they didn't. And we've retained the plaque, and we assured the family we're going to relocate the basketball court in phase 2 of the park. So again, I apologize for the editorial, but I just wanted to clear the air on that because it's just unfair that he gets to write these things without checking any facts. So thank you. Next, can we do roll call?
Mayor Jerry Larson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Chris Minardi has an excused absence. Trustee Sandra Melendez.
Here.
Trustee Carrie Doyle.
Here.
Trustee Sarah Amadon has an excused absence. Administrator Marco Spaladrone.
Here.
Village Attorney Lisa Perillo.
Here.
Great, thank you. All right, first up is Hugh, our historian, with much knowledge.
Don't say that. Okay, May 2023 is the 200th anniversary of the song Home Sweet Home being sung for the first time. It was sung for the first time on May 8th, 1823 at the Covent Garden Theater. John Howard Payne wrote the words to the song, not the music. The song, of course, became very popular. It was sung at the White House by Adelina Patti in 1862 when President Lincoln's son died. Jenny Lind, the Swedish Nightingale, brought here by P.T. Barnum, sang it in 1850 while John Howard Payne was in the audience at the time. The song was taken out of the operetta and sold separately because copyright laws were usually ignored, or they were very weak in those days. The song was from an operetta, Clary, the Maid of Milan. It was sung during the Civil War until the generals decided they better stop having it sung because the men were getting homesick. It did not come from The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy clicks her heels together and goes, "There's no place like home, there's no place like home." It actually came from the pen of John Howard Payne. And unfortunately, people think the song was written by the building called Home Sweet Home. No, it wasn't. Don't tell the village board, I'll be out of a job. Okay. And the other thing is, if you really want to know what happened during the singing of the song, just check with Mike Tracy because he was there in 1823.
Thank you. Next up is Susan Raybold from Cityscape. about wireless legislation that we've decided to undertake.
Yes, thank you for having me this afternoon.
All right, Susan, I'll start showing the presentation. Give me a second here. All right.
All right, sure. Well, thank you for ordering such great weather. It's beautiful up here
It's
today.
beautiful.
It's absolutely gorgeous. I've enjoyed it.
Okay,
great.
can everybody see it?
Yes.
Great.
How do I change my slides? Do I
You just let
ask
me
you to
know, and I'll try to go along as best I can. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Next slide, please. So we were hired last fall to provide you a wireless telecommunications master plan and a model ordinance. So Cityscape we are located primarily in Florida. I came from North Carolina. And we work only for local government. We do not work for a service provider. We don't build towers. We don't do site acquisition for tower companies. We only work for local government in the niche market of wireless telecommunications. Next slide, please. So the master plan process was to first identify the existing wireless facilities that you have in your geographic area. We actually did a project very similar to this, and we're wrapping it up for the town of East Hampton. And Billy reached out and asked if you could piggyback onto what we were doing. So we took the information that we had put together for the town, and we did a separate study just for the village. So we started with let's see if you'll go back one slide, please. Thank you. So we started with the assessment of the infrastructure. So we went to all of the antenna facilities. We looked to see who was on there. We took pictures, we mapped them, and we provided an inventory catalog. And I think you have the access to that in the share folder. It has images of the sites, it has a map of the sites, and information about the facility or facilities that are at that location. Then we did propagation mapping that shows theoretical, simulated predictions of the coverage that comes from each of those sites. And we were primarily then concentrating on where the gaps are. And then we show you where those gaps are so you can proactively plan for infrastructure in that area. And then we provided a model ordinance for you to look at, use that as a launching point for future telecommunication regulations. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide, please. So just a little history about telecommunications and what this project is about. You may recall back in the 1980s when cell phones first launched, they were in sort of like a handbag, and they operated in the low frequency. They worked in the 800 megahertz. And when you got outside the service area of that hand device, it got staticky and faded away like a radio station used to before it went satellite. And then in the late, or actually early 1990s, second generation launched. And that was the much smaller handset. Reminded me a lot of like Star Trek, those little flip phones. And then in 2007, we had the multi-unit device that used a combination of broadband and wireless for a lot of applications on the smartphone. And since that time, phase 1, 2, and 3 have completely been shut out. So wireless providers are now solely operating in the 4G platform and transitioning to the 5G platform. And what you'll see with 5G is the infrastructure pretty much looks the same. They replace antennas, remote radio heads, software, but it provides more access to capacity so that you can download more images, stream more apps, and have more access to the Internet of Things. Next slide, please. So just a few quick facts is regarding the use of the smart devices. 76% of travelers say that they rely on their wireless phones for navigation tools. You have over 300% using apps for health and fitness, and it's estimated that at the end of 2023, there'll be over 31 billion devices connected to the network. So what this means, with more and more people reducing their landlines to their homes and businesses, you have more need for a robust network. Next slide, please. And the way the system used to work prior to really 4G was you had macro cell facilities, which are large antennas on taller towers, typically over 100 feet, and they covered larger geographic areas. But with 4G and coming 5G, you have more need for densification. That requires either more macro cells or small wireless facilities. Those small wireless facilities can be seen along Montauk Highway, outside of the village, more towards, as you go towards the point, towards Amagansett and beyond, you start seeing some small wireless facilities that have been deployed in the rights of way along Montauk. And those are 37 feet tall. That's the pattern that's been developed, or that's building out now in the town. And I think you could expect perhaps to see some of those small wireless facilities at some point, or request for small wireless facilities in the village as well. And they work together. You can't necessarily have one without the other. They work together to provide coverage and capacity. Next slide. So here are examples of non-concealed macro towers with macro cells on them. The image, the first one on the left, is in the village. It may be familiar to you. It's a lattice tower. The image in the middle is a monopole, and then the image on the right is a guide tower. And those are all macro cells in the first two, and broadcast and macro cell in the third, but it's really hard to see because of the trees. Next slide. So those were non-concealed. These are concealed facilities. And in the concealed facility, the goal is for you not to be able to see the antenna, the coax cable, the remote radio heads. And so the faux tree on the left is in northern Westchester County. And you can sort of see the outline of the tree, the antenna at the top of the faux tree. Those antennae are covered with antenna socks so that they don't stick out and look like antenna protruding from a fake tree. And then you have concealed macro cells also in the middle and on the right. That is a pole that, when it gets to a certain elevation, has radio-friendly cylinder that goes around all the antenna that are configured tightly on the interior of the pole. So you don't see those antenna, and you don't see the coax cable. And the image in the middle is a typical white one, and then they can also be painted. On the right, it shows a green one. I've seen them painted brown, black, dark brown. You actually have a number of those middle type poles along the Jones, the highway that goes through Jones Park along the shore. I saw about 3 of them yesterday as I came up that way. Next slide, please. Now, when you have an antenna attached to a structure that is not a tower, so it's a structure that's built for another purpose besides wireless communications, that is now called a base station. And so the water tank was not built for the sole purpose of that equipment, and so it's considered a base station. And that base station is in the town of East Hampton, and you can see the antenna attached to it. There's a utility pole in the right-of-way in the middle, and it has equipment attached to the top of it, and that's considered a base station. And then you have the rooftop mount on the far right. That is considered a base station. And those are all non-concealed. Next slide. Now, you do have some very good examples of concealed and non-concealed. One here in your community at the church, which is on the left. There are 3 service providers in the faux steeple behind those louvers. You have AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon all there, so you can't see any of that equipment. Similarly, on the far right, over in the town of East Hampton, you have a faux building extension, and behind that top part of the building is all the equipment. And then in the middle, that is what we consider a semi-concealed facility. The antenna has been painted to match the architecture of the building, but you can, if you look hard, you can still see the antenna. So we consider that semi-concealed versus completely concealed. Next slide. Now for your small wireless facilities and the rights of ways, these you can see these antenna on the very top of these utility poles are much smaller in size compared to the macro cells. In fact, by federal definition, they cannot exceed more than 3 cubic square feet. So they're much smaller antenna. They cannot be generally more than 50 feet tall, and they require far less ground space. The images on the left and on the right, the equipment that supports the antenna is mounted on the utility pole. You see the extra equipment that's above ground level, and the middle has the equipment off the pole and on the ground. You just can't see it behind the hedgerow. And those are non-concealed. Next slide, please. These are examples of concealed small wireless facilities whereby you do not see necessarily the antenna and all the wires and the ground equipment on the facility. They've been painted in these scenarios either a dark brown or black. And the image on the left, you can see the ground equipment just to the right of that tower, of the utility pole. In the middle, the equipment is surrounded by a shroud on the pole. And then on the right, that equipment is off out of the right of way and to the right, excuse me, to the left of the tower. Next slide. So I share all that with you so that as I go through the rest of the presentation and I refer to towers and small cells and macro cells and base stations, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So I want to move into the mapping now. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, my coworker Elizabeth and I, we've been out here a couple of times to take images of the equipment. Next slide. And the inventory catalog looks very much like this. It's where you have an image of your site, your map, and then the information that accompanies that location. Next slide. So your geographic area includes the village boundary plus a 1-mile radius around the village. Because if we didn't include those sites in the 1-mile radius, it would distort the predicted propagation pattern that we're going to show you. So we include those. And within the study area, you have a total of 7 facilities. 3 of them are towers, although 1 is approved but not built yet. So you have 2 existing towers. 1 of them is in the village. That's what we call site number 9. Excuse me. And you have 4 base stations, one of which is site number 8, is in the village, and 1 is proposed and under review outside of the village. So you have 2 sites in the village of the 7, and the other 5 are in the perimeter. And of those sites, 3 are towers and 4 are base stations. Next slide. We then want to look at what type of antenna are on there. And of the 7 sites, all 7 of them are macro cells, although one of the sites, which is in the village, is a macro cell and public safety facility. So you can use public safety sites for macro cells. It's done quite frequently. Next slide. Looking to see where the sites are located is what we're showing on this next map. Of the 7 sites, you have 2 on private property, one of which is in the village. There are none inside the rights of ways. You have 4 on, well, you have 4, 2 existing on public property and 2 proposed on public property for a total of 4, and 1 within the utility easement. So the site number 8 that's in the village is on public property. Site number 9, which is the religious institution, is on private property. So you have a mix of public, private, and in the utility easement. Next slide. And then with regards to design type, of the 7 sites, you have 1 in the village that's concealed, 1 that's in the village that is non-concealed. And then collectively, overall, you'll end up with 3 that are concealed in the study area and 4 non-concealed in the study area. But again, within the village, you have 1 non-concealed and 1 concealed. Next slide. So the next set of maps I'm going to show you are our predicted coverage maps. And the first map that I'm going to show you is assuming that all of the service providers are all on the same facilities. Because ideally, you want your facilities to maximize co-location, which means all of the service providers are on the same site. And that reduces the number of facilities overall that you need to have. And then I'm going to show you the predicted coverage from 3 providers because they're not all on the same facility. And so they have a different propagation pattern. And that's important because the federal law requires local governments to provide equal access to all service providers in the same geographic area. And so if you have one service provider that covers an area, then all of them have to have equal access to that same area. And if they're not all on the same facility, and the same facility can't not accommodate all of them, then you have to allow them another site. And that's why we're concerned. That's why we want to show you what the gaps are. Okay, so the next slide, please. All right, so this is the predicted propagation pattern at the high frequency level, which is standard for GLTE and 5G. And when you look at this map, you see a prism of colors from yellow to dark blue, and in some areas, no coloration at all. So the yellow represents a superior signal, which means that from that facility, the antenna can get into a building like this one. And so you would be able to make a phone call in this building, receive and download information from your wireless device, whether it be a phone or tablet, in order to have connection. As you transition to the green, those areas show a signal pattern that is strong enough for in-vehicle coverage, maybe indoor, depending on the vegetative cover around the buildings and the type of building materials that are used for the buildings. So you may or may not have in building, but you would have in vehicle. The blue shows outdoor signal. Again, you might get signal inside your window, maybe not in the interior of the building. You would maybe have in vehicle, but you would definitely have outdoor. And then where there's no coloration, and there are a few pockets around the Lily Pond area eastward where there is no coloration, it's kind of hard to see on that map. That area, those are some definite areas that have some very some gaps where you may not have coverage at all. Next slide. Now previous slide that I showed you was assuming that all service providers were on the same infrastructure. And this slide is showing provider A, provider B, provider C, and we do not disclose who those providers are because these are simulated prediction maps. We do not have their proprietary information that identifies the exact antenna that they're using, the power density, any tilts that they have, the software that they're using. This is just a generic software pattern, and we're not trying to concentrate really on where the coverage is. We're really wanting to focus where the coverage is not, because that's what you need to plan for. And so you'll see that really kind of that area in the middle of the town where you see the most blue and green is where you have what we would call your biggest gap area. Next slide. The next thing that we do is we look at a couple of variables. We look at how the infrastructure is used, which is your map 1. We look at the predicted coverage, which is map 2. In the middle, and then map 3 on the right, which you can't quite see because of the window of the meeting space, is the census data. And most of the village is low-density residential, which is 0 to 500 people per square mile. But the census block right behind the image of us meeting is a higher density census block. A couple of them actually, and the density in that area is up to 1,000 people per square mile. The reason that's important is because when we do a comparison between the number of antenna and service providers in the area compared to the demographics of the population, then sometimes we find that the number of subscribers exceeds the number of subscribers that the infrastructure can handle, so that there's more people in the area than what the infrastructure can accommodate. So the next slide is showing that the area in dark green would be an area where we don't anticipate needing more infrastructure. The light green is an area over the next 10 years where you may need more infrastructure because of capacity. The orange and red would be areas within the village that you are going to definitely need more infrastructure over the next 10 years. So between coverage and capacity, we use both of those maps to come up with our predictions of areas where you would need infrastructure. Next slide, please. So this map is showing geographic areas, not pinpointed properties, just the area, where we think if you added sites over the next 10 years, you would be able to fill in the gaps that we showed on the previous maps. It includes 1 new macro facility at 100 feet and 3 small wireless facilities in the 37-foot area. You can't see the 4th one because it's a little bit off the viewing of the display there, but it's there we go. Thank you. In the very far southeast corner of the village. So those are the areas that we think over the next 10 years you may want to plan or see if you can plan for a facility. Now, if you don't go with the macro cell in that area, then you would probably be looking at 4 to 6 small wireless facilities as an alternative. But we are trying to show as the minimal number of facilities. And I also need to point out that those small wireless facilities in Montauk, or I should say along Montauk Highway, excuse me, those are single service providers on those 37-foot small wireless facilities at present. If another service provider wants to go there, and we hope that they do, they would need to add 10 feet to that facility in order to accommodate it. And that's permitted under the federal government, that they're allowed to increase the height of their existing pole once it's been built by 10 feet. Alternatively, they would need to remove that facility and build it to accommodate all of the service providers. Otherwise, you're looking at 4 times the number if they're not built on the onset to accommodate all of the providers, because you have 4. Up until recently, you had primarily AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon, but Dish is now entering the market area. In fact, they're on some sites in the town already, and they're looking to go on 2 of the facilities right outside in the perimeter. So next slide. So what do you do about regulating these facilities? Because your current village code does not have standards for regulating these future wireless facilities that you may be having to deal with. So we put together a model ordinance for you to look at. Next slide. And a few things, we have a few parameters that we have to operate in. The first one is the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which goes back to what I said in the beginning, that you cannot treat any of the service providers unequally. You can't discriminate against any of them. So if one has come in, you have to allow all of them in. And they all have rights to come in and build out. Your ordinance and code cannot have the effect of prohibiting wireless service. So you can't say that they're not going to be allowed in residential unless there's going to be some way of them going into residential and getting a signal into that area. Because barring them out of certain zoning districts could easily have the effect of prohibiting service. We don't encourage facilities on single-family lots or residential lots at all, but sometimes local government has property, parks, there could be religious institutions, there could be schools, there could be public safety facilities within residential areas that would be more appropriate for a rooftop perhaps, or a concealed facility. You have to review the request within a reasonable period of time, so you can't just keep delaying and delaying and delaying action because there are now designated shot clocks. And you cannot regulate environmental effects of radio frequency emissions. The federal government has determined that the emissions from the equipment is not harmful to humans, and so you cannot use that as an argument to deny a facility. Next slide, please. Once a site is approved by the village, it becomes an eligible facility. And once you have an eligible facility, and you have 2 of them, then the industry is allowed to, by right, to go in and make modifications to those facilities. Now, the one that's on the village-owned property, because you're the landlord, you have more control over that. And so even if they came in and they wanted to, and they demonstrated they needed to go taller or do something different with that facility, as an eligible facility request, because you're the landlord, you could say no and have them work with the facility that's already there. But if it were on a private property and the property owner wanted to, was agreeable, then they would be able to go up 10 feet. Now, they cannot exceed the definition of a substantial change, and there's 6 components to that, one of which is if you have concealment techniques that were used in the original approval and what they're proposing takes that away, then you can have grounds for denial. So, for example, if at the religious institution they wanted to do something different under the eligible facility request, and the proposal was going to distort the concealment that's there now, then you have grounds for denial, excuse me. Next slide. So for a co-location that does not exceed the definition of substantial change, you have to approve it and meet those definitions. I already discussed that one, so you can skip this slide. And then as far as timing, and I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but generally, your small wireless facilities and co-locations need to be approved within 60 days. A new co-location on a new structure that doesn't have a wireless facility is 90, and new towers are 150. Now, if an application is turned in and you deem it incomplete because they don't address everything in your code, then that stops the shot clock and that application tolls until they resubmit. And so you could go beyond that 150 days or 60 days or 30 days, provided you've told appropriately the process. Next slide. So in your model draft, and I'm not going to go through it in great detail right now, except to say that all the definitions that are in there, and there's multiple pages of them, of the definitions, those come from the Code of Federal Regulation. And we follow the Code of Federal Regulation so that we are using the same language that the industry uses, and that we have grounds for legal grounds for approvals and denials that are consistent with federal standards. There's a proposed siting preference table that promotes the use of co-location first and small wireless facilities opposed to freestanding macro cells. And the idea, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, is that that establishes how you would want them to look for new sites when the industry comes in. Location has been, there's a preference. You can't require them to go on village property, but since you already have a site on village, you have a precedent set. And as the landlord, you can control that site so much better because you control the lease. So we put that as a preference as well over non-village property. And the design type suggested in the model ordinance is only for concealed or semi-concealed. There's no allowance for non-concealed facilities. Based on your community characteristics and the fact that you already have a fabulously concealed wireless facility as a precedence, we felt like you could go that route. Next slide. So here's the sample of the table or chart that shows the first choice is co-location, second, a concealed new base station, third, a small wireless facility, first concealed, and then second, the freestanding, and then fourth, the concealed tower. And this is just a starting point for discussion. I'm not suggesting you adopt this like it is. This is just a starting point. And the idea would be if, say, a service provider came in and said, okay, well, we want to go ahead and just build a new concealed tower on non-village property, they would have to provide a lot of evidence demonstrating why they could not go first as a co-location on an existing facility. And if that test fails, they'd have to demonstrate why they can't do a concealed base station somewhere else. And if that test fails, so you work through that whole list, and they have to demonstrate every step of the way why they've come to the conclusion that what they're proposing is the only thing that they can install. Next slide. All applications, regardless of the type of facility, whether it's a co-location on an eligible facility or whether it's a new facility, would all be required to submit, or it's all recommended in the model, that they supply a site plan, a signage plan, lighting, they address sounds, and we gave recommendations. I don't know if you have a sound ordinance in your code yet. If you do, you can take that part out, but we gave a recommendation for maximum sounds, primarily from generators, that would be permissible, requiring a prohibition against any hazardous materials being stored on site, requiring a structural analysis, requiring statements of RF compliance and non-interference with public safety, and a standard for removing facilities if they become abandoned or no longer in use. And then as you move through to new facilities, those facilities would also require photo simulations so that you could look at what it's going to propose to be looked at, propose what it's supposed to look like. If it's a new facility, a balloon test so you can see the height relative to adjacent surrounding properties. Radio frequency prediction plots so that you can look at the propagation pattern and how they're fitting into their existing infrastructure. And then other development standards are also in there that promote the least visual effects on the landscape. Next slide. Just go ahead and click through all those, please. I'm just going to run through. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on each one of those, but, oh, whoops, back, please. If you click.
The PDF didn't
Okay, well, we have
translate through.
Okay. All right. Well, we have 6 additional recommendations. And basically, those the first few are to go ahead and if you adopt this plan and you go with this plan, go ahead and look at those geographic areas and pinpoint facility areas or agreeable property perhaps that the village may have where a site could go, pre-design it. And so when the industry comes in and they want to go in that area, you already have a plan in place. Again, the whole purpose for this document is to be proactive. So the next steps you could take would be to just do that. Go ahead and plan out what those sites look like. Go ahead and create a standard lease agreement so that you have your expectations laid out in terms of terms, finances, access to the site, maintenance of the site for when it's on village property. Also, if you have any fiber in the community, I don't know if you have it mapped out, but having the fiber mapped out is also very beneficial because it prevents facilities from having to have microwave. They can tie into fiber. Areas where there is no fiber, where they may need sites, go ahead and plan how you're going to get fiber to that area so that you get the most robust network built in the beginning when it gets installed than having to go back later and try and update. So I know that's a lot of information. You have all these provided to you in document, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
What do you see the current problem being? Just capacity? Because we have so many people, the population increases so much during the summer, you can't even use your phone. Calls
Well-
drop constantly. You'll dial a number, it'll just, seems like it's waiting till it can connect.
Correct. Well, you definitely have a gap area. You have some gap areas. That's year round. And then when you get to about now, heading into Memorial Weekend through fall, when you have a lot of visitors into the area, the capacity just shrinks. And that's what happens. The coverage maps that I showed you, and it showed those large geographic areas, the more subscribers you have using that infrastructure simultaneously, that area shrinks and gets smaller and smaller, which is why perhaps during part of the year you can use your handsets, and then during another part of the year when there's more people in the area, you cannot. And so that's the use of the small wireless facilities or another macro to help offload that capacity.
Got it. Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Well, if we identify a location and we design it like you suggest, who would pay for it? The providers?
The provider, absolutely. Yes.
And are they incentivized to do this?
Well, if they're incentivized to provide a complete coverage, and they will follow your path of least resistance. So if you design a site and get it approved publicly, and everyone agrees, and they come in, they develop according to that, it could be an administrative approval. But if they came in and they said, okay, well, we see what you designed it for, we know it's been approved for this, but we want to do X, Y, or Z, then they would have to go back through the public process, vetting process, and that can take a long time. And so the more you can do on the front end to get the sites pre-designed, that creates a path of least resistance, and they're very inclined to follow that. Whereas coming in and trying to put up a site, and I mean, I've seen it take, a couple years in parts of East Hampton and other parts of New York where sites have taken a long time because they weren't vetted previously and there was not a plan in place.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank
Thank you.
you.
Next up is Bob Hefner. Going to talk about the Domini Museum.
Morning.
Good morning.
Mayor and Village Board. Now we can move on to some 18th century technology. a little bit simpler. Can I have the slides, please, Jason?
Yep, working on that right now for you, Bob.
Okay, thank you.
And here you go.
Completion of the Domini Shop project, and to recap the essential components of this project, we have on North Main Street at the center, we have the reconstruction of the timber frame and exterior of the Domini house of 1773. And to the right, on the north end, we have this original 1791 woodworking shop, and the south on the left, the original 1798 clock shop. So within the reconstructed house will be the exhibit area, flanked by the two gems of the original shops. And this, of course, the museum will be operated by the East Hampton Historical Society. So a lot of the work of Phase 2 included mechanical systems and things such as the sanitary system, a new water service, HVAC system, completing the fire suppression system, installing a bathroom, providing ADA access. And all of this work is essentially complete, except for the ADA route still needs to be done. Next slide, please. But certainly the most exciting and challenging work of Phase 2 is restoring the interior of the clock shop, and especially the brickwork of the forge and the fireplace in the woodworking in the workshop. And here you can see at the left our mason working for John Hummel. Phil Cangelosi is working on the clock shop chimney. Next slide. So on the left is a floor plan of the clock shop. At the north, at the bottom, is the forge room with the forge, and then the little fireplace is for the room at the south, which was the workroom. So in the forge, of course, the blacksmithing, casting, any work that required heating metal. And the workroom was for clockworks, repairing clocks and watches, and machining metal that didn't require heating. In the right-hand picture, you can see the magnificent brickwork that separates the two rooms. So in the right is the forge, and it's flue corbelling east to meet the flue of the fireplace in the workroom, which is to the left. Next slide. The photograph to the right is a 1940 photograph of the forge. This is the only photograph that we have of the forge. And to the right is the reconstructed forge. This was a difficult reconstruction based on painstaking study of that photograph and of sketches and notes made by the Historic American Building Survey in 1940. Next slide. And here's Phil Cangelosi carefully reconstructing the brickwork. We used 18th century bricks. About a third of the bricks were from the Domini house itself. They'd been salvaged in 1946 by Dudley Roberts, so they're back there. Lime putty mortar, the same used in the 18th century. And on the right is the completed forge, an exact reconstruction of the original. This is an important piece of work because this is the best documented 18th century forge in America. And you could say that this is the only authentic 18th century forge in the country today. Next slide, please. This is the brickwork within the workroom. So this little fireplace, the hearth, and the forge is behind the brick wall to the left of the fireplace. And the little square opening is for if Domini's working on a long piece of ironwork, such as a millstone spindle, and he needed to shove it further into the forge, it could be put through that little doorway. The little niches were for warming jars of acids or other chemicals next to the flue from the chimney, from the fireplace. Next slide, please. So with completion of the masonry, which was only about 3 weeks ago, the carpentry work in the clock shop could begin. The original pine floor of the workroom and the original oak floor of the forge room were reinstalled. On the right in these photographs, you can see the reconstructed partition and doorway from the forge room into the workroom. This was completed actually earlier this week. In the left-hand photo, you can see the contrast between the pine flooring of the workroom and the oak flooring of the forge. Both of these floorboards have incredible patina that shows all of the work that was done in these shops, over the years. Also, the plaster ceiling was installed recently. Just as Phil Cangelosi carefully reconstructed the brickwork, John Hummel's carpenter, Zenon Tominski, is doing the restoration carpentry with great attention to detail. So we had this team of only 2 craftsmen, assembled by Hummel partner Bruce Rambold, and these two men are the reason for the great success of this project. Next slide. Thank you. Quite a lot of carpentry work remains to be done in the workroom of the clock shop. The 1940 photograph on the right shows the shelves, tool racks, and workbench that will be reinstalled on the original wall paneling. You can see the outlines of all of those shelves and racks and benches that's still on the paneling. Next slide. What we can't see on the far left is the fireplace. So Phil Cangelosi is now building the fireplace in the woodworking shop. You can see just a little bit of it on the left there. Most of it is out of the slide. The fact that there was a fireplace in the woodworking shop is one of the great discoveries of this project. Before this, it wasn't known that there was a fireplace in there, but it certainly makes a lot of sense if you're working there in the wintertime to have a little heat. So when the fireplace was stored, the shop will truly be the environment in which Nathaniel Dominy was working. The Dominy shops is a real feather in the cap of this village board and of all village officials who supported it over the 8 years that it's taken since we first started planning this. A few other municipalities have accomplished the restoration of this quality and significance, as I'm sure you are aware. And the plan is for work to be completed by the end of June, which will give the Historical Society some time to do an exhibit for an opening in August.
That's terrific. And Bob, thank you so much for spearheading this project. And I know this has been a lot of work for you, and I know you're taking it easy on us with your consulting fees. So I just wanted to thank you so much. I don't think this would ever have gotten done without your help.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Next up is our village administrator to talk about the budget.
Okay. I have no slide or anything to show, just an Excel sheet, so I just thought I'd read a little bit of the budget letter. Well, first of all, I'm pleased to have sent you the board. Thank you very much for all your help in putting the budget together. As you know, you're all liaisons, including the deputy mayor and trustee Amidon for all her help as well. Thank you to our department heads for everything that they do. Every February we kind of start off the budget season putting together wish lists of what we need to provide better services for village residents for the next year, anything that they're lacking. Basically, the goals that it's a shame Dominique is not here, because every year I ask for her to be here, but she doesn't want to. I guess she doesn't want to be here.
She's watching.
I'm sure she's watching. So she deserves a lot of credit. But usually when compiling the budget, our goals have really been to lower taxes if at all possible and deliver, high quality services for village residents. Number 3, keep investing in the village's infrastructure and equipment. Number 4, to grow the village's cash on hand position for many of its capital projects and needs. And 5, lowering our debt burden. And this FY 2024 budget does it all. And we're very proud of it. So it lowers taxes for the first time for 2 consecutive years in the village history. And I think even though it goes down a smidge, I think that little bit is important. It really is a communication to residents that we didn't need that extra bit. So I think that's important. So At last month's board meeting, it was excruciatingly long, as we all know, but it was important. The $800,000 of the budget amendment that we made, it really contributed. It took a lot of next year's purchases for this year, and we really trimmed down a lot, and that helped out, as you can see in this budget. It lowers taxes by 0.18% to 3106, and as we strive to provide better services to residents in the most efficient and cost-effective manner to minimize any possible increases in taxes that is expected by us. Our tax base is 97% residential, and property tax bills are substantial as village residents pay both village and town taxes. So we appreciate their hard-earned tax dollars in funding the level of services that are currently provided, and understand that any increases in municipal budgets must be carefully explained and justified. And other than that, there's a couple of key highlights. The assessed values almost $49 million. The total budget is $27.891. Revenues are up $2 million over last year's budget, and they are conservative. Beach revenues are up. The surplus remains the same, $600,000. We thought for a month we could bring that up, but we kept it at $600. But we did add another $100,000 to our contingency account, making it at $300,000. I think when we first started here, it was at $100,000, but I think now it's more proper at $300,000. Just that little extra level of safety. And that's it. That's all I got.
Well, that's terrific. I just want to thank the department heads, and Dominique, I know you're watching. Thank you. And Marcos, of course, thank you for all your hard work. I know it's a very time-consuming process, and done a great job. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes,
And thank
thank
you,
you.
Dominique.
2 years in a row lowering taxes, you don't hear that anywhere else, so well done.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have 2 public hearings, and if Lorraine, you could read the first one.
Introductory number 7, 2023, a proposed local law authorizing a property tax levy in excess of the limit established in General Municipal Law, Section 3C.
Is there anyone who would like to be heard on this? All right. Can I get a motion to close?
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The hearing's closed. Next hearing?
Introductory number 8, 2023, a proposed local law amending property maintenance and nuisance abatement, Section 225-5C2.
Anyone like to be heard? You can just step up.
Okay.
Hi. Nice to meet you both.
Hi, I'm Michael Kretschmar. This is Chuck Thomas, and we live at 35 McGurk in the Village.
Welcome to the Village.
Thank you. We love it. We're almost at our 3-year anniversary mark.
Oh, nice. You join a bunch of great neighbors there, so.
We are so lucky. We've got some great neighbors. And in fact, we're here speaking on some of their behalf. So we're representing John and Jackie Gearing and Richard Chilwich and Terry Roush.
We're going to, just so you know, we're going to keep this hearing open for another month.
Okay.
So if June 16th will be our next hearing on this matter. So if they want to come, they can also come, or they can send emails in the meantime.
And they were all unable to make it today and asked us to represent them.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think we will be out of town for the next one.
Okay,
but,
well, that's great. It works out perfect.
So first off, a big thank you to the Board of Trustees for acknowledging there's a problem with bamboo in the village. We are 100% in favor of the proposed language. And we do have some photos. I know that everybody's on board here, but we thought it might help illustrate for the record just how severe this problem is. And I did email some photos to you, Marcos, and Chris this morning. Also, we sent the same photos about a month ago. I don't know if you have access to them, or I've got some hard copies here we could pass from. There's just 5 of them.
Yeah, that's great, and we can keep them for the record as well.
Okay.
And actually, Jackie came over this morning and gave us more.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we sent a separate email with some photos that Jackie and John took. And I think the key takeaway here is the bamboo is a nuisance. And it's even dangerous because it leaves some sharp stalks up in neighboring yards, which can be dangerous for small children, including grandkids and dogs. And so I'll pass these around, but this first photo shows This is taken from our house, looking into the backyard. There's a property line, and there's bamboo at 176 Newtown Lane, which is the offending bamboo. And this bamboo is affecting not just our property, but also the Gehrings and the Terrys and Richards. And you can see that the... Yeah, that's great. So you can see that the bamboo is actually literally touching the fence and the property line, and certain times of the year when the wind is blowing, it's pushing down onto the fence. And here's one more picture showing the same thing.
Yeah.
So this picture shows that the bamboo doesn't just touch the property line, it burrows underneath and runs and invades and encroaches. This photo is taken about maybe 30 feet from the property line. You can see the stalks that have been chopped down, but even once they're cut down, they're hard to remove because they're like a PVC plastic pipe that go down deep into the ground. And these are pictures from Terry and Richard's yard. It's showing basically the same thing, that when the roots come down, they penetrate, they grow out 6, 8, 20 feet, and it takes hours and hours to remove them. One more picture showing bamboo coming up. This is a dramatic picture. It was taken 2 winters ago when we had a lot of snowfall. This snow got into the bamboo and caused it to come down into our yard. That might have been a good opportunity to chop it down, but we wanted to be good neighbors, and we didn't.
Jason, if we have the images, the file images, could we add these into the taped production then of what
Marcos,
post-production?
I'm going to try to find where those
That's
are.
okay. No, just after.
Oh no, we
when it plays
can't.
on
We
it.
can't put it in post.
All right.
And then last but not least, this slide just shows, this is more of a nuisance. Bamboo tends to be very messy, and it has leaves that fall almost year-round. This photo was taken about less than a day after the yard had been cleared of all the refuse that the bamboo drops. So this is less than a day's worth of leaves that we get, and it does happen year-round. Do you have any questions on any of these photos?
And actually, the majority of those photos were taken when the bamboo was dormant. In the summer, like the spring, summer, and fall.
Excuse me, could you speak at the podium and to the microphone, just because we're having a hard time not hearing you on broadcast. Thank you very much. All is well, thank
Thanks,
you.
Jason.
The majority of those photos are when.
This is Chuck Thomas.
Sorry, hi. or when the bamboo is dormant, and during the spring, it's now just kind of starting again, like the new shoots that come up, and you can see them come up, and they can grow 3 feet in one day, and sometimes they'll come up through where you saw some of the stalks in the hedge on the side. They can come up through like a 15-foot hedge in no time, and we'll just notice them coming up. And last year we noticed the bamboo roots were actually growing horizontally through the ground, and they were even under the grass. You could kind of see it, at the bottom of the grass, like even 6 feet from the house. So we're, a little concerned. Like, we don't know exactly what's going on in our yard right now, but we're planning a renovation, and we, putting a pool there, and so that's a little bit of a concern there, and especially since Jackie came over today, or John Gehring called us over in the fall, and he had been out in the yard for 4 hours and showed us this big hole where he had dug up this huge root that was encroaching his pool. And he was like, I just want you to come over and see. I've been out here for 4 hours, blah, blah, blah. Jackie brought over photos today of where you've got this whole root system that's up against their pool, where I think John had just found a couple of days ago.
Yeah, and we emailed those pictures before the meeting.
But
Jackie.
you can just sort of see, how it's come up from, the backyard to the pool edge, and this is all roots up against their,
From the neighbor's bamboo?
From the neighbor's bamboo, yeah.
The Chuck is showing a
So
picture
anyway,
of bamboo
no,
that's touching the concrete of the neighbor's
It's
pool.
more of a, and I know we've, have tried to, cut some of this off in the stalks, and then, even the landscapers say, well, we're not even supposed to take this to the town dump because it's illegal to even take it. So, I don't know, it seems like it's a real problem.
Right.
It's a real issue.
So,
So,
no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Thank you for looking at all of those photos. I think the next points that we wanted to make, and I'll do this briefly, is that we think the language looks great, but we think it could be even better if it has more details around containment and what is the true definition of mitigation, and also perhaps some additional language on enforcement. And I've got some draft bullet points. I'd be happy to email them to you. I could briefly read them, but essentially we're asking for some kind, I think best case, the law would require a neighbor with offending bamboo to remove it completely. If the village decides that that's too severe and wants to allow that neighbor to keep their pre-existing bamboo, then we have some suggestions on language that would ensure that it doesn't encroach onto other neighboring properties. And that could include having a required setback from the fence. As you saw in those photos, it's literally touching the fence and pushing it over. And could also include language around installing some kind of an impermeable barrier, rubber, metal, plastic, that would go down into the earth, perhaps as deep as 6 feet, to prevent the rhizomes from spreading into neighboring yards. And also, we're not bamboo subject matter experts. We've done a lot of research, but perhaps the village would want to retain somebody's services that could counsel on what this language should look like to be fair and based on science. And I think lastly, we would want to encourage you to include some language on empowering the code enforcement office to actually enforce this language and set up a mechanism so that if a neighbor is complaining about bamboo, that should trigger something that should happen in a defined period of time with a defined outcome. And if none of this happens, last but not least, we believe there should be some language for noncompliance. So if a neighbor is not going to oblige by all of this new code, what are the penalties?
Okay. I love it all. Could you email it over to
Sure.
the village administrator?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
We emailed it this morning, but I think we've refined it as we've been talking, so I'll send you a new version.
We're going to keep this hearing open, and we can certainly tweak the law and make it a little better if we think it's, appropriate. The reason we are changing the law is because it came to the building department's attention that the law was a little overreaching, if you will. To require a neighbor or anyone to just remove bamboo because they have it would, require a lot of money and a lot of inconvenience. And if the bamboo isn't bothering anyone, why would they have to remove it from their property? And the way this law was written, code enforcement could drive down the street and go, oh, there's bamboo. Let's give them a summons and tell them to remove it. And we didn't think that that's really the intent that we wanted. We wanted to make sure neighbors were not being affected by someone's bamboo. But let's say in this particular case, the bamboo's growing out back and it was a wooded area and it's not bothering anyone.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want somebody having to spend thousands and thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to remove something that's not offending anyone. So that's why we're tweaking it, but we can tweak it further to have, we'll have the lawyer look at it, and if you could send over your recommendations, we'd be happy to.
That'd be great.
Look at
Thank
that,
you very
too.
much.
Great. No, thank you for coming and taking the
We
time.
appreciate that you guys are
It's a
looking.
serious, it's a serious problem. We understand that, but at the same time, we don't want to penalize people who don't have offending bamboo, if you will. So,
Thank you.
great. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you both.
Thank you.
All right, does anybody else have any comments about bamboo? Otherwise, we're going to keep it open for another month. Do we need a resolution to keep it open? No, right? Or a vote or anything?
You can vote to keep it open.
Okay, can I get a motion to keep it open?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Next is public comment about anything other than or anything. Tiger? No? Okay. All right, we're going to go into...
I apologize. Can I say one more thing during public comment?
Absolutely.
Sorry. Carrie just, and I didn't read the editorial, but what you had mentioned, the I think my comment was taken out of context, I think, by the editor. I don't know if, he certainly didn't approach me about it, but it was, the comment I think he's referring to is about a plan, an actual piece of paper plan for Phase 2. There is none.
You're referring to Herrick Park.
It's always known that we wanted to put the basketball back. We've said it at multiple board meetings. I think I'm even quoted in the Star saying that. So there is absolutely an intention to put those basketball courts back.
Yeah.
There has always been that. So that's it.
All right, great. Lorraine?
Okay, Resolution 489, 2023, approved claim vouchers for the month of April.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 490, approve warrants as listed. General Fund number 54, 56, and 57, guarantees number 53, LoSAP number 55, and Capital Fund number 58.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
491, approve budget transfer, Schedule 6, Reference 6, dated April and May of 2023.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
492, approve departmental reports.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Resolution number 493, resolved the 2022-2023 village budget is hereby amended to increase estimated revenue and appropriations in the amount of $420,659 for expenditures related to the fire protection services.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 494, resolved the 2022-2023 village budget is hereby amended to increase estimated revenue and appropriations in the amount of $130,000 for expenditures related to beach building maintenance.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 495, resolved the 2022-2023 village budget is hereby amended to increase estimated revenue and appropriations in the amount of $596,900 for expenditures funded by the Capital Reserve Fund.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Approve the transfer of $596,900 from the Capital Reserve Fund to the General Fund for the expenditures related to the Herrick Park bathroom project as per permissive referendum.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 497, approve $17,349.08 proposal from Ben Krapinski Builder for emergency stabilization of the truss system at the Emergency Services Building located at 1 Cedar Street, per May 12th memo from Dave Collins.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 498, accept the bid received from Class Act Maintenance Incorporated for year-round weekend bathroom cleaning, Herrick Park restroom and beach bathrooms on weekends seasonally, effective May 2023 to May 2025, per May 10th memo from Dave Collins.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 499, accept the East Hampton Village Foundation donation of $63,551.69.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 500, approve change order number 4 for Herrick Park Phase 1A renovation project from Land Tech in the amount of $15,464.70.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 501, approve change order number 5 for Herrick Park Phase 1A renovation project in the amount of $5,768.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 502, approve $16,370 quote from Traffic Logics for the delivery of 3 rubber speed humps to be used on a pilot project for Highway Behind the Pond, per May 12th memo from Dave Collins.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. Let me just make a comment about that. We were approached by the neighbors who live on Highway Beyond the Pond, and they were complaining about a lot of speeders, which we seem to have a lot of in the summer times on all of our roads, and we have a small police department, and you can certainly not cover all of the streets that we need to cover. However, they wanted to see if we could, there's a lot of children in that area from the Maidstone Club, and another community close to us, Sagaponack, has installed permanent speed bumps on a lot of their roads in their village. So we thought this would be a good opportunity to try a pilot program. These are not permanent. They're bolted into the ground, and we can remove them in the fall if we desire. So we'll give it a shot, and we'll see see if it works. They tend to be noisy, with landscaping trailers and things like that, so we'll see how the neighbors, they're all in favor of it right now, so we'll see how it goes. And at least we can remove them. But that's the story behind that. Thanks, Lorraine.
Resolution number 503, approve $29,239.65 proposal from South Fork Asphalt for permanent pavement patches at select locations per April 20th memo from Dave Collins.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 504, deem as surplus and approve the sale online by Auctions International of assorted vehicles, equipment, parts, and miscellaneous listed in Dave Collins' May 1st memo.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 505, deem surplus and decommission 2017 Ford Explorer, East Hampton Village ID number 2340, per May 11th memo from Chief Tracy.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 507, approve resignation of Gerard Terza Jr. as a Public Safety Dispatcher 2, effective May 31st, 2023.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. Thank you, Jerry, for all your years. And hopefully this next chapter in your life will be fun.
Resolution number
So,
5.
Jerry's not leaving us. He's just been switched to another department within the village, so. Parade detail.
Resolution number 508, appoint Gerard Terza Jr. as the Fire and EMS Administrator at an annual salary of $165,000, effective June 1st, 2023.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Resolution number 509, accept fire department officers' election results for 2023 to 2024. Chief Engineer Dwayne Forrester, First Assistant Chief Engineer Alex Verdugo, Second Assistant Chief Engineer Greg Brown, and company officers as listed, effective May 1st, 2023, per April 6th memo from Dwayne Forrester.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. I just want to thank publicly all the officers for all the volunteers all the work they do. We really appreciate it, and congratulations to all of them.
Resolution number 510, employ Teresa Reynolds as a full-time EMTB at an annual salary of $58,240, effective June 1st, 2023, per May 11th memo from Chief Tracy.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 511, approve the following individuals as employees with the village's EMTB program at the hourly rate of $25, effective immediately, pending completion of background checks: Tyler Goldrick and Roger Levisica, as per May 12th memo from Chief Tracy.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 512, employ 2023 seasonal paramedics and EMTBs, effective May 15th, 2023, per May 11th memo from Chief Tracy.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 513, employ 2023 seasonal traffic control specialists and traffic control officers, effective May 15th, 2023, per May 11th memo from Chief Tracy.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 514, approve amendment to resolution number 486 of 2023 to indicate Diane Batego's hire date as April 6th, 2023, and placed on immediate leave of absence until May 1st, 2023, at which time she began work as a full-time EMTB, per May 11th memo from Chief Tracy.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 515, approve amendment to resolution number 424 of 2023 to indicate Brandon Esposito's hire date as May 1st, 2023, and placed on immediate leave of absence until June 16th, 2023, at which time he will begin work as a full-time police officer, per May 12th memo from Chief Tracy.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 516, approve employment of 2023 beach staff, Eduardo Cali as beach staff at $13 hourly, Morgan Grant and Charlie Kim as lifeguards at $17.50 an hour, and Sean Daly as a lifeguard at $20 an hour, effective May 19th, 2023, per April 27th memo from Drew Smith.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 517, approve employment of Francis Hanford at $18 an hour as a 2023 seasonal tour guide at Hook Mill, effective May 19th, 2023.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Appoint new members to the Business Revitalization Committee, Robert Rattini, David Hashmall, and Donna McDonald.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 519, adopt as local law, introductory number 7, 2023, a proposed local law authorizing a property tax levy in the excess of the limit established in general municipal law, section 3C.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 520, notice of public hearing to be held on June 16th, 2023, at 11 a.m. at LTV Studios, 75 Industrial Road, Waynescott, New York, for introductory number 9 of 2023, a proposed local law amending the code of the Village of East Hampton, Chapter 185, licensed occupations and entertainment.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution number 521, notice of public hearing to be held on June 16th at 11 a.m. at LTV Studios, 75 Industrial Road in Waynescott, for the proposed fiscal year 2024 budget.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 522, approve employment of Ernesto Cumbe and Douglas Pitches as part-time laborers at $25 an hour, effective May 26, 2023, per May 17th memo from Dave Collins.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Resolution number 523, approve change order number 6 for Herrick Park Phase 1A renovation project from Land Tech in the amount of $17,568.99.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 524, approve change order number 7 for Herrick Park Phase 1A renovation project in the amount of $24,750.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Resolution number 525, accept new volunteer members of the Department of Emergency Medical Service, EMS, effective May 19th, 2023, per May 18th memo from Mary Mott.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. So I want to thank, that's 4 new volunteers that are being accepted in today into the ambulance. So we're very happy about that. If anybody out there is interested in being a driver, we can do that now. We have about 12 people that have joined since May 1st that are just drivers. So if there's anybody who's interested, please contact Village Hall and let us know. We'll set you up for training. I'm going to need a motion to go to executive. I'm going to need a motion to close this meeting and then go to executive session.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The meeting's closed, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
We're going to go to executive session, and if there's anything we have to talk about